When it comes to rivalries in college football, most of the attention goes to the more nationally relevant ones, like Ohio State versus Michigan, Texas versus Oklahoma, or Alabama versus Auburn, just to name a few. But today, I wanted to shine a little light on some of the less talked about rivalries that still provide a ton of entertainment value. So in this video, we'll be talking about rivalries that include schools within the Big Four conferences that can often get overlooked on a national level. So without wasting any more time, let's get started. Starting off our list at number 10 is Oregon versus Oregon State, aka the Civil War. The Ducks currently hold a 20-win advantage with 69 wins to Oregon State's 49. But don't let that lopsided record fool you. This rivalry has been quite competitive over the course of its history. In modern times though, it has become more of an underrated gem that can often get overshadowed by more nationally relevant games. The Civil War has produced some incredible moments over the course of its history, especially in Corvallis, where any Oregon fan will tell you strange things tend to happen. Like for instance in 1994, when the Ducks walked into Corvallis looking to secure their first Rose Bowl appearance in 37 years. The Beavers, meanwhile, were just a mediocre 4-6 team. Despite that, Oregon State took it to their hated in-state rivals, with a blocked punt and quarterback sneak being enough to give them a 13-10 lead late. But in the final minutes of the game, Ducks legendary quarterback Danny O'Neal would lead Oregon on a 70-yard touchdown drive to give the Ducks a 17-13 victory, securing their first Rose Bowl appearance in 37 years. Another classic moment in this rivalry came in 2022. The Beavers produced one of the craziest comebacks in college football history. After falling behind 31-10 with under 5 minutes left in the third quarter, the Beavers would stage an incredible comeback that would see them secure a 38-34 upset over their hated in-state rivals in one of the greatest games of this series. If you haven't yet, I highly recommend tuning in to see the chaos these two interstate rivals produce, especially when it takes place in Corvallis. Next up at number 9, we have Minnesota versus Wisconsin in the battle for Paul Bunyan's Axe. As we stand currently, this rivalry is deadlocked at 63 wins apiece, making it one of the most competitive in all of college football. In my opinion, this rivalry has the best trophy in college football in Paul Bunyan's Axe. It is a massive 6-foot-long axe that the winning team uses to chop down the opposing goalpost in one of the coolest traditions in college football. Along with being an insanely competitive rivalry, it's also had quite a few classic moments over its 134 meetings, with the 1993 matchup in particular being one of those. The Badgers entered that matchup at 6-0 and were slowly starting to gain national title attention. Minnesota, meanwhile, was a mediocre 4-4 squad looking to ruin their rivals' championship dreams. The Gophers' defense, who struggled mightily coming in, would give up over 600 yards of total offense in the game, but 5 interceptions along with a couple massive 4th down stops would see Minnesota secure a 28-21 upset victory. It was Wisconsin's first and only loss of a season that would end with a Rose Bowl victory and a dream of what could have been an undefeated season and a possible national championship. Another massive moment in this rivalry came in 2005, an absolutely legendary game in this series, a game in which both teams entered ranked in the top 25, a rarity over the course of the rivalry's history. Minnesota would lead nearly the entire game, as every time Wisconsin was able to get on their heels, the Gophers would have an answer. Minnesota was just one punt and 30 seconds away from a massive victory. But then, this happened.
Here's the punt coming from Kusa.
Coming after it.
Oh, he fumbled it! It's blocked! Unbelievably! Wisconsin with a chance to pounce! Who's got it?
The Badgers would hold on to celebrate a 38-34 victory in one of the best games in the history of this rivalry. This is easily one of the most underrated rivalries in college football and should without question be getting more attention. Next up at number 8, it's just clean, old-fashioned hate between Georgia and Georgia Tech. The Bulldogs hold a substantial advantage in the win column with 72 wins to Georgia Tech's 41. Due to that, and the Yellow Jackets' struggles in the 21st century, this has become a severely underrated rivalry. The gap in success has created a very interesting dynamic, with Georgia Tech being the scrappy underdog to the national powerhouse Bulldogs from Athens. Still, this great Southern rivalry has had its fair share of classic moments over the years. Like their 2006 meeting, for example, it is one of the fondest memories for Georgia fans when it comes to this rivalry. The Bulldogs found themselves trailing 12-7 with under 2 minutes left in the game, but freshman quarterback Matthew Stafford would lead the Dogs on an 11-play drive all the way down to the Georgia Tech 3-yard line, where facing a 3rd and goal with the game on the line, a Bulldogs legend was born.
We got 4 receivers out wide. Stafford retreats, looks, pumps, throw, touchdown, 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 my God, a touchdown, 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 Massacre.
Just 2 years later, in 2008, these two would provide yet another instant classic, and in my opinion, one of the best comebacks you'll ever see. Georgia stormed out to a 28-12 lead at the half, thanks in large part to Stafford, who was now a junior and torching the Georgia Tech defense at will. But in the second half, things got a little wild. The Yellow Jackets scored 26 unanswered points, taking a lead that they would never surrender, as Georgia Tech would go on to win a thriller 45-42. Georgia's dominance in this rivalry, especially over the past 25 years, has led to this rivalry being serially underrated. But when it hits, let me tell you, Georgia versus Georgia Tech is one of the best parts of rivalry weekend. Next up on our list at number 7 is the border war between the Missouri Tigers and the Kansas Jayhawks. Currently, Missouri holds a slim 3-win advantage in the overall series. However, that record is disputed, as Kansas claims their on-field win from 1960 that was later overturned to a Missouri win due to an ineligible player on the Jayhawks squad. If you like college football rivalries with a ton of real history and real-life animosity, then this is the rivalry for you. After all, the name The Border War is a reference to a real war fought between the two states, known historically as Bleeding Kansas. And sorry Missouri fans, but I gotta take Kansas' side in this one. Unfortunately, this rivalry has been on an extended break, as the two sides have not met since 2011. But the good news is, it will make its long-awaited return this upcoming season. Looking back at a couple classic moments from this series, we start in 2008, a game in which the Jayhawks traveled to Kansas City looking to pull a massive upset on the 13th ranked Tigers. The Jayhawks would storm out to a 26-10 lead early in the 3rd quarter, just to see Missouri come all the way back and take the lead twice in the 4th. Kansas would end up having one final chance to win the game at the end, getting the ball back with 1:40 left on the clock. 8 plays later, the Jayhawks would find themselves at the Missouri 26-yard line, facing a 4th and 7 with the game on the line.
Sharp in the backfield with Todd Reesing. Reesing in trouble here. Looking. Got him! Meyer! Touchdown, Kansas! Oh, man! Unreal! Here we go. 5 seconds to go. 54-yarder. No way, and Kansas is going to win.
The following year, in 2009, we would again get another instant classic in the border war. Again, it would be Kansas claiming the early double-digit lead, which they would squander, only to take the lead again in the final minutes, just to squander it all again. Missouri would kick a walk-off field goal to win a thriller 41-39. Unfortunately, this rivalry was lost to conference realignment, but there is hope with the rivalry making its triumphant return this upcoming season that we will see these two compete on a yearly basis once again. Next up at number 6, we have a bit of a wild card pick with Iowa versus Penn State, a really underrated gem. The Nittany Lions currently hold a slight 4-win advantage with 18 wins to the Hawkeyes 14. Now this is not a traditional rivalry with a long history attached to it like many of the others we'll talk about, but it is a criminally underrated rivalry that should be pushed more by the schools in conference. The animosity between the two programs and fan bases has been growing at a rapid pace, which I believe has made for one of the best rivalries in the Big Ten. Over its 32 meetings, it's also produced quite a few instant classics. Like in 2008, for example, the toughest loss of my college sports fandom. Penn State walked into that game in Kinnick Stadium with a 9-0 record and were fresh off a win over Ohio State in the Horseshoe 2 weeks earlier. The Hawkeyes, meanwhile, were just 5-4 on the year and had not played a ranked team all season long. Penn State would go on to take a 9-point lead into the fourth quarter, but a Sean Green touchdown run paired with a last-second field goal would give the Hawkeyes a 24-23 upset victory, ending Penn State's chances at a national title. Another classic moment from this rivalry came in 2017, again taking place in Iowa City. Both teams entered that matchup undefeated and had high hopes of a Big Ten championship and possibly more. The Nittany Lions would again take the lead into the fourth quarter, where Iowa running back Akram Wadley would rip off a pair of monster touchdown runs to give Iowa the lead with less than 2 minutes left in the game. But Penn State legend Trace McSorley had one final trick up his sleeve, leading the Lions down inside the Iowa 10-yard line, where one final play would decide everything.
McSorley across the middle. Touchdown! Jawan Johnson. Penn State wins it. A walk-off touchdown.
This may not be a traditional rivalry, but it has a solid amount of animosity, and more often than not, when these two teams tango, a good old-fashioned Big Ten slugfest is the result. Next up at number 5 is Iowa State versus Kansas State, or as it's better known, Farmageddon. Iowa State currently holds a 54-50 advantage in the overall series. Now, due to these two rarely being national title contenders, this rivalry has a tendency to get slept on by the national media and casual fans. But to those who know, this is one of the must-see games of the year due to the teams being so equally matched year in and year out. There's been absolutely no shortage of great games and incredible moments over the course of this series, like in 2015 for instance, when Iowa State was looking to snap a 7-game losing streak to their hated rivals. They even ran out to a 34-14 lead at the half. But the Wildcats were desperate to keep their streak alive in the midst of what was an underwhelming season, and they would fight back to cut the deficit to 7. With the pressure firmly on Iowa State's shoulders, a series of catastrophic events would lead to one of the craziest collapses in college football history.
Handoff, Jones, touchdown! Lanning sack, fumble, loose ball! Recovered by Kansas State! Jack Cantelli for the win. Cantelli's kick. It is good! Unreal finish here in the Little Apple.
A few years later in 2018, the Cyclones would finally get their revenge. Despite trailing 38-21 in the fourth quarter, the Cyclones would stage a miraculous comeback, scoring 3 touchdowns in the final 12 minutes of the game to steal a 42-38 victory, snapping a 10-game losing streak to the Wildcats in the process. Farmageddon is one of the best rivalries in the Big 12. Over the years, this matchup has produced incredible game after incredible game with no signs of slowing down anytime soon. Next up on our list at number 4, we have the battle for Los Angeles between the UCLA Bruins and the USC Trojans. As we stand today, the Trojans currently hold a 51-34 advantage in the overall series. Now, this rivalry used to be one of the biggest in college football, but in more recent times, with both programs taking a dip, it has started to lose a little relevance in the national spotlight. But it is still a very historic rivalry with a lot of animosity and tradition attached to it. One of the great traditions of this rivalry is both teams wearing their home uniforms for the big game, which easily makes it one of the best uniform matchups in college football on a yearly basis. As we take a look back at a couple of classic moments from the golden years, we start with the 1990 matchup, a game famously remembered as the Shootout. It was one of the greatest games in college football history and had one of the wildest endings that you will see in any sport. The Trojans took a 24-21 lead into the fourth quarter, but then all hell would break loose. Both teams would combine for 42 total points, swapping the lead back and forth 4 times over the final frame. The final score came with 16 seconds left as USC quarterback Todd Marinovich would find Johnny Morton with a picture-perfect throw into the end zone to finally seal the deal and give the Trojans a 45-42 victory. 6 years later, in 1996, the Battle of LA would produce yet another all-time great finish. The Bruins, trailed by 17 points in the fourth quarter after a USC touchdown, looked to finally be the dagger in UCLA's chances. The Bruins would find a way to cut the lead to 7, but a failed onside kick in the final minutes looked to be the final nail in the Bruins' coffin.
Second down and 10. Bruins have just one timeout left. Inside again, and the Bruins... Fumble! Bruins have it! 4 seconds left, second down. They can get a first down without a touchdown at the 1. They'll run it. Hicks up the middle. Touchdown UCLA!
And waggle out of this formation.
They're going to give it to Hicks again anyway. And up the middle he goes. Skip Hicks. First outside. Skip Hicks going for the end zone. Skip Hicks touchdown UCLA!
UCLA would go on to shock the Trojans in double overtime in what was the first overtime game in this series, in a day that'll live on forever in Bruins lore. Unfortunately, this rivalry has become a bit underrated, mostly due to the game rarely having the high stakes that it was once accustomed to. So hopefully these two programs can build it back up soon, because college football needs one of its most historic rivalries to return to national prominence. Sliding in at number 3, we have Mormons versus Mormons and BYU versus Utah, or as it may be better known, the Holy War. Now, the record of this rivalry is disputed, but either way you choose to look at it, Utah holds a commanding lead in the overall rivalry. This private versus public school battle is one of the more fascinating rivalries in all of college football. The University of Utah is a state-run school with a mostly Mormon population that is located in the state capital of Salt Lake City, while BYU, on the other hand, is a private school owned and operated by the Mormon Church and is located in Provo, which is basically the exact opposite of Salt Lake City in every conceivable way. Thus, these two schools were destined to look down upon each other, creating a very heated rivalry that has seen some incredible moments over the years on the gridiron. Like, for instance, their incredible 1993 meeting, where despite both teams having mediocre seasons, 65,000 people packed into Cougar Stadium to watch a back-and-forth slugfest. BYU was on the verge of salvaging a tie despite trailing all game long, thanks in part to Cougars quarterback John Walsh, who threw 5 interceptions on the day. But in the final 2 minutes of the game, the Utes would drive into BYU territory, setting up kicker Chris Jurgensen, who had already missed 2 field goals and had an extra point blocked, with a 55-yard field goal attempt to seal the win. Another classic moment from this rivalry came in their 2006 meeting. In that matchup, both teams held and proceeded to blow double-digit leads throughout the game, but BYU found themselves with one final chance to come away with the win. Trailing by 3 with just over a minute to go, the Cougars would go on a legendary drive, and rumor has it, Harline is still open.
They have a 3-deep zone. They have McCain up on Harline, but they have someone behind him. They have to go to the end zone.
Final play of the game, barring a penalty, all the time in the world for Beck. Can anybody get open for him? He'll roll right, lets it go, finds this guy, touchdown!
The Holy War is one of the best rivalries between non-traditional powers in all of college football, and thankfully, for now, it's been saved. But the fact that this rivalry's future was recently in doubt is a massive embarrassment to the direction of college football. Next up on our list at number 2, we have North Carolina versus North Carolina State, one of the most underrated rivalries in all of college sports. The Tar Heels currently hold a commanding lead in the overall series with 68 wins to the Wolfpack's 40. Now, if you like rivalries with deep-seated hatred and plenty of on-field skirmishes, then this is the rivalry for you. More often than not, whenever these two sides get together, all hell tends to break loose, while rules and norms kinda go out the window. Like that one time when then NC State head coach Tom O'Brien casually accused the Tar Heels on camera of paying their players and fudging grades. A classic example of the hatred and deep-seated bitterness in this rivalry. Unfortunately, this rivalry gets no love in the national spotlight, but if you are a hardcore college football fan, you owe it to yourself to give this rivalry a chance. Looking back at a couple amazing finishes between these two programs, we start with their 2009 meeting. A game that saw North Carolina lead almost the entire way, as they seemed to be clicking on all cylinders in their attempt to get revenge for an embarrassing 41-10 beatdown from the year prior. There was just one problem. The guy who engineered that beatdown, quarterback Russell Wilson, he was back again. This time, leading a comeback that would see the Wolfpack take an early fourth quarter lead that they would never have to surrender, thanks to the Tar Heels blowing 3 separate chances to retake the lead in the final minutes, and impressively enough, they also found 3 separate ways to doom those game-ending drives as well. Oh, and Russ wasn't done there. He returned a year later to lead another comeback victory, cementing his legendary spot in this rivalry's history. The Tar Heels would finally get their revenge in 2012 in a wild back-and-forth game that saw both teams take and then blow double-digit leads throughout the contest. The Tar Heels would go on to score 18 unanswered points in the fourth quarter to finally get their revenge with a 43-35 victory. This rivalry easily deserves a spot on this list more than any other. It is the very definition of an underrated rivalry and should, in my opinion, be getting way more respect from the national media and casual fans for the absolute chaos that it produces on a yearly basis. And finally, at number 1, we have Florida versus Tennessee, a yearly tradition on the 3rd Saturday of September. The Gators currently hold the lead in this rivalry with 32 wins to the Vols' 22. Now, these two programs are not natural rivals like most of the others we talked about, but it is without a doubt one of the most underrated rivalries in college football, and I would argue the most underrated rivalry in the SEC. Florida's dominance from 2005 through 2021 has caused this rivalry to simmer a bit from the heated boil it was once known for in the 90s and early 2000s. It was during those heated times where this rivalry really started to take off, with the infamous Faxgate scandal being the starting point. That scandal involved a fired Tennessee coach faxing Tennessee's offensive playbook to Florida's defensive coordinator as revenge for his firing. The Gators would go on to win that game 35-18, while Florida head coach Steve Spurrier would later joke that the former Tennessee staffer got rewarded with a nice new house for his troubles. As we take a look back at a couple classic moments from the series, we start in 1998 with the 6th ranked Tennessee Volunteers looking to snap a 5-game losing streak to their hated rivals, the 2nd ranked Florida Gators. The Vols defense, who struggled year after year with the Gators offense, finally found their footing, forcing 4 fumbles and holding the Gators to just 17 points come the end of regulation. There was just one problem. Tennessee was also stuck on 17 points thanks to a stingy Florida defense, sending the game into overtime. The Vols would go on to kick a field goal in overtime, while Florida would miss their field goal attempt that would have sent it to a second overtime to give Tennessee a much needed 20-17 victory, causing the fans in Knoxville to rush the field and tear down the goalpost. 2 years later, Knoxville would play host to yet another all-time classic. The Vols were on a 23-game home winning streak at the time and were looking to knock Florida from the ranks of the unbeaten. Tennessee held a 23-20 lead with less than 2 minutes left in the game, meaning Florida would have to go 91 yards to score the game-winning touchdown. Florida would end up marching all the way down to the Vols' 3-yard line, where we would get one of the most controversial finishes in college football history.
Palmer moves under center. Bo Carroll is the running back. Comes the blitz, quick flip, caught. Did he hold it long enough? The official says yes. Oh boy, is that going to be controversial.
The Florida-Tennessee rivalry is massively underrated. It may not have the tradition and history that many other great rivalries do, but it continues to produce classic on-field moments at a pace that many other rivalries fail to match.